Hi there, I'm Nathan Kiley and welcome to Nathan Kiley Athletic Performance. Today I've got a quick little presentation about planning your in-week training for cricket. I'm going to go over a few of the aspects that you need to keep in mind. We're going to address all of the sorts of considerations you need to take into account to mitigate the effect of fatigue and maximise your readiness to perform on the weekend. Now, before I get into this, there's a few assumptions that we first need to make sure are clear. So this really only applies if you play games at regular intervals, typically on the weekend, so Saturday and or Sunday. If you play a sport or you are playing cricket on multiple days during the week at regular intervals, or you compete in competitions that are separated by numerous weeks, then this microcycle planning is not going to apply to you. So you still need to plan your training, obviously, but it would be somewhat different. So the first question you're probably all asking is, what is a microcycle? So there are three different types of cycles that we use to break up our training planning. They are the macrocycle, the mesocycle, and the microcycle. Now, the microcycle is what we will be focusing on in this video, but I think it's important that we highlight what those other cycles are first. So a macrocycle is the largest block. It's typically the entire season, but that's not always the case. The mesocycle is how we break up the macrocycle, and that's typically what we use to designate training blocks. So this could be a block of training where we focus on one specific physical attribute that we want to maximize development of. Now, the mesocycle could be anywhere between 3 and 8 weeks, depending on the sport and the athlete, but generally you're probably looking at 4 to 6 weeks. Now, the microcycle is the smallest cycle amongst all of them. It's the building block of the mesocycle and typically is just 1 week in duration. Why do we need to plan our microcycle? Now, this is so that we're making sure we're getting the right stimulus at the right time during the week. It ensures that we manage the onset of fatigue. It ensures that we continue to make gains throughout the season. It helps us to prevent injury. And most importantly, it will maximize our readiness to perform in matches on the weekend. So how do athletes typically get this sort of thing wrong? Well, there's two categories that athletes will fall into generally when they get the planning of their training week wrong. They either train too little or they train too much. Why they train too little is often that they're worried about delayed onset muscle soreness, feeling sore, feeling fatigued, not feeling ready to perform on the weekend, so they don't want to overtrain during the week. Or the other thing is that they're focused on the sport-specific training too much. So in the case of cricketers here, that's that they want to net 3 or 4 times a week. They want to bowl a lot of overs, and they forget about the other physical aspects of their training, their conditioning, their strength work, and things like that. And then at the opposite end of the spectrum is they train too much. And this is where if we look back on this past slide and we look at preventing injury and maximizing readiness to perform in matches, that's where they're going to fall foul. You can't fault the enthusiasm. They are keen to train. They want to get things done, but they are shooting themselves in the foot because they're not offering an opportunity to their body to recover. Now, the way I typically like to program a training week is by dividing training days during the microcycle into high and low CNS intensity training days. Now, the reason we do this is to maximize adaptation and provide stimulus following supercompensation from the last training bout. And this reduces the compounding neural fatigue, which results in increased readiness, speed, power, improved training, and overall performance. I'll explain what that means in just a moment. Now, the way to illustrate the supercompensation aspect that we just spoke about is what we've got here in these figures. As you'll see in the first figure at the top left, where our readiness to perform, or our ability to perform, is traveling along in a linear straight line fashion. That first dip that we've got there is a training bout. After training, your ability to perform actually decreases. You don't get better during training, you get better in the supercompensation that then occurs afterwards, which is when that curve shoots back up to a higher position than where we were initially. Now, after a supercompensation, you'll slowly taper back off to where you started. However, what we do through Educated Training Program is provide another stimulus, as you see in the second figure at the top right, where our ability to perform drops off again, but we get another supercompensation and increased performance. And our final figure shows all of that. And what we're aiming to do is create that, as you see, that linear line that's heading up and towards the right, following along all those supercompensations. That's an improved ability to perform over gradual time based on multiple training sessions. Now, how do we use this high-low system of managing our neural fatigue and getting our supercompensations to work optimally? So what we do is we divide our training days into high-intensity days and low-intensity days. We want to have low-intensity days in between our high-intensity training bouts. Our high-intensity training days are the ones that are going to result in the biggest drop in our ability to perform. However, it's these big dips in ability to perform that will result in the biggest supercompensations. Now, we don't want to just train two times a week with days off in between. We want to continue training in those other days where we can work on other things like our skills, and we can work on a variety of other physical aspects that require less neural fatigue load on the body. So as you can see in this figure I've got here, what we would do is we would divide our the types of training activities that we would do into these two categories. So on the left, our high intensity training days with a high neural fatigue, which constitutes an intensity of above 90% of what you would have as a personal best in that particular activity, includes sprints, jumps, medicine ball throws and plyometrics, change of direction and agility, lower body weights, any bowling session where you're bowling effort balls, and weighted ball bowling if that's something that you do. Our low intensity training days include mobility, low intensity swimming, our extensive and intensive aerobic conditioning, so that's our fitness work. Tempo bowling, so tempo bowling is bowling within oneself, bowling at what would be less than 70% intensity. Our batting drills, fielding, that one's a bit of an iffy one. Specifically if you're doing static catching, slips catching or short catches, things like that, that's definitely low intensity. But if you're doing a lot of high catches with a lot of movement or a lot of throwing drills where you're stopping and throwing and moving to another position, that could become a high intensity drill, and therefore you would need to move that up to a high intensity day. If we're just doing some core strength, so working on our abs and things like that, and some upper body weights as well, are typically not going to fatigue the nervous system as much. As you'll have noticed in that graph, there was no medium intensity training. The reason for this is that I typically want to avoid medium intensity training with team sport athletes. Medium intensity training generates fatigue, which means that it would need to be trained on a high day. Now, the reason that we don't want to do that is that high days of training, it's sort of a basket that has, it's not a bottomless pit. You've got a limited amount of high intensity training you can do. So when you want to add something to the basket, add a bit of training to the basket, you've got to take something else out. So I personally don't think that one should be removing a high intensity training stimulus to replace it with a medium intensity training stimulus. You're going to get more from the high quality work than from a medium quality training stimulus. So do you want to sacrifice high quality training for less than high quality training? I say no. Medium intensity training doesn't make you maximally faster, it makes you slow for longer. So you're going to probably do your medium intensity training, and you'll be able to increase your duration of your outputs, but you're probably not going to increase the size of the output in and of itself. So the high-low system in practice, this is just an example. In the typical sort of grade cricket or league cricket in the UK sort of setup, you're going to have a game on Saturday with your league or your grade game. That's the big fixture, the one that really matters. So that day needs to be the priority, and you're aiming to be maximally recovered and ready to perform on Saturday. Sunday may be another game if you're playing Sunday cricket, or you've got say a PG's under 20s game in grade cricket, or a first grade T20 game. Now, if you don't, you should really be taking this day off. Just get your mind off cricket, just to avoid burnout, and as well, the body really needs to recover if you've had a big innings or you've been bowling a lot on a Saturday. Now, on a Monday, we want to enter our training week nice and easily. We don't want to have a huge blowout straight away. The body might not be prepared for it, and that increases your injury risk. So Monday, we use a low training day. If I revert back to my my breakdown of high and low intensity training, what you'll see is what can typically be done on the Monday. So you're going to do a bit of mobility. You could go for a light swim. You could go for a run. If you're batting or bowling, you could be just doing some tempo bowling, rolling the arm over. Batting, we could do some batting drills, some hitting in the nets, some static catching, some technical drills, maybe an upper body session in the gym with some abs or something like that. But we're not going all out on that day. Tuesday and Thursday are our high intensity training days. So if we revert back to our little table here, this is our day where we're getting our real work done. If you're a fast bowler, you need to be doing your effort balls on these days. You need to be bowling with high intensity in that session. You can work on some speed, some agility, some jumps, throws, plyometrics. You want to work really hard on your Tuesday and Thursday sessions. Wednesday is the same in terms of what you can do as the Monday, and Friday is a really low day. You can have a hit, do a bit of catching, but I would probably avoid the aerobic conditioning elements, and you can do some weights and stuff there as well. As is the answer with a lot of these types of things, it is a matter of it depends. If you could still do anything from that low intensity training day, but you need to do it in an educated fashion. So some considerations and shortfalls. First of all, there's a few rules that I think you need to put in place when you're thinking about planning your weekly training. The first and most important one is that we don't train our high intensity days on consecutive days. This defeats the whole purpose of using a low intensity day in between to allow for recovery. So you need to put aside at least 1 day per week for complete rest. That's a really important one as well. Typically a low day or the day after a match. So we're talking a Sunday, maybe a Monday or a Friday. Always start the training week on a low day. We already discussed that. We want to reduce our chance of an injury early in the week when the body hasn't really been moving. And we never want to train a high day the day before we're going to play a game. I mean, the one exception here is probably if you're a fast bowler and you know you won't be bowling the next day. You could theoretically do that, but I would probably advise against that as well. Now, a consideration is that you need to be adaptable. So if you're typically just playing on Saturdays and all of a sudden you get called up to start playing Sundays, you need to adapt your training. You need to reduce a little bit of the training load during the week to ensure that you've got enough tickets left over to perform on the Sunday as well. So it's the same sort of principle as that basket principle we talked about before. if you want to add some sort of physical activity, you need to take something else out. The body can only handle so much. Now, there are some limitations, especially when you're talking about this sort of programming for a non-elite athlete who hasn't got the benefit of maybe a lot of technology to monitor your readiness to perform. So it's important that you listen to your body. If you're feeling really sore and burned out, that's probably for a reason. So try and take as much as you can out of this and implement it into your weekly training and your preparation for a game. But the golden rule is you need to listen to your body and you need to figure out what works exactly and the best way for you. Thanks for watching this presentation. I hope you've learned something and you can add that to your training that will benefit you and help you improve your performance. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel, like my Facebook page, follow me on Instagram. I'm sure you can find all of those links somewhere. I'll add them to the description. And until next time, thank you.